Good evening from Vietnam. Good morning to you, Amanda. Thanks a lot for spending your morning to join our program and share your amazing journey to our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, we want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
Amanda, you haven't been to Vietnam, so now you have a new friend, new family. So if you decide to travel to Vietnam, or if your assignment is sending you to Japan, it's pretty close to our country. So make sure that you put Vietnam on the map for you to travel, and you know who to call when you get there. Okay.
I will. That would be great. Maybe we'll do a book tour stop in Vietnam. We'll see if we can figure that out.
Absolutely, and who knows if you want to have it translated into our country, I'll be able to connect our publishers in here.
Oh,
Also,
that's a fun idea.
yeah, okay.
Already making dreams come true.
Absolutely. And in our culture, it's very honored if we can have you to share a little bit about who you are and the work that you are doing. Would you please do that honor for us?
Yes, of course. So I'm Dr. Amanda Crowell, and I do a few things that all sort of center around the concept of great work. So great work is sort of my concept that captures the idea of work that feels meaningful and purposeful, like a calling. Work that you get excited about for reasons that just feel like they come from inside of you. They're natural. It's the work that we feel called to do. And often it's the work that we are the most quick to put aside and not get to, and prioritize it at the bottom of the list. And my mission is to help people have the awareness that they're doing it, as well as the skills necessary to actually get to that work. Because it is my opinion, and I've seen it happen with hundreds of clients, that if we can help people do the work that matters the most to them, that has intrinsic meaning, then a lot of the divisiveness and outrage and so a lot of the stuff that we're just seeing in the world, nationalism, like all of those divisive mechanisms become less attractive, because we know that we're doing the work that matters to us, and we're seeking the people that also care about that, and it creates natural bridges across previously perceived differences. And so I really have dedicated my last 3 years to the concept of great work. I have a podcast, and I do live classes, and I have a book that the second edition of which is coming out on June 10th. And so it's really my great work is helping other people find their great work.
Wow. So you're doing your great work and helping other people to find it and doing their great works also. So, thank you for sharing that. And for doing that, Amanda, I noted in the clock in here that you introduced about yourself and your work in less than 2 minutes. All right. And that's not cool. It's not fair for our audience. And we're going to travel time together. We're going to examine the journey leading you to do this great work and the ambition to help people to do their great works. How does time travel sound to you?
Sounds good. I'm excited.
All right. Okay. So I grew up in the middle of the country, and that is where the war happened, and devastated a lot of things in my city. And when I grew up, few days we have electricity, and few days we didn't have electricity. So my most entertaining at night, I remember, was like when we saw the moon rose up, right? And then it made everything very bright and clear at night. And so my first dream about the world and the works I am going to do is was become an astronaut and travel into the moon. It seems pretty cool, and see how bright it is up there, right? But life didn't give me any opportunity to do that great work, Amanda. And it took me to a very different territory, different directions in life also. So Amanda, when you were little, what kind of dream that you had about the future work that Amanda is doing, the value that she's going to contribute to the world?
That's such a good question, because I didn't get to do my childhood great work either, which was I grew up in Ohio in the 70s, in the late 70s, early 80s, when Sesame Street was just getting its sort of start on American public television. And do you have Sesame Street? I know there is a Vietnamese Sesame Street. Do you know Sesame Street? Okay, so Sesame Street is a children's television show that has Muppets, which are these sort of furry, ridiculous puppets that teach children, in the case of Sesame Street, they teach children the alphabet, numbers, and the purpose of Sesame Street was to reach out to students who maybe don't have the same kind of childhood as more privileged students. So at that time in education, we talked a lot about being kindergarten ready, which kindergarten is the very first grade of the American public school system. And kids who are kindergarten ready knew their letters, they could count to 10, and they had some like phonemic awareness, which is like you can sound out words. But really privileged kids would come to school knowing all of that, but other less privileged kids, more vulnerable kids, would come without that knowledge. And so it was already creating this difference between students. And so Sesame Street was started by Joan Gans Cooney in an effort to bring that information in a way that it could get to more vulnerable students so that they could be kindergarten ready. But the interesting thing about that show is that they got involved with a guy named Jim Henson, who was a puppeteer. He did the Muppet Show, and these Muppets were invited onto Sesame Street. And they're a lot of different Muppets, but the ones I liked the most were Bert and Ernie. And Bert was a buttoned up, he was like a very stern Muppet. He liked pigeons, and he wanted to clean the kitchen. He was like just a very straightforward, like, you know, upright Muppet. But his best friend was Ernie, and Ernie loved ridiculousness. Like he just ran around, and Ernie would clean the kitchen, and then Bert would come and mess it up, you know? And so they were like this lovely friendship. And it was the first time I remember thinking, oh, we can be friends with people who are not just like us. And there was something about that message that made me think, like, Sesame Street's going beyond letters and numbers, and it's teaching this social emotional kind of like different reality that maybe you don't have access to. And so when I was little, I just wanted to be on Sesame Street. I just wanted to go there and see those Muppets and be a part of that, and children's educational television. And I thought that's what I would do with my whole life. Because I just wanted to be a part of that. And so it's interesting because I did not work at Sesame Street. I did move to New York City with the desire, because it is actually recorded in Queens, New York. But it just didn't happen for me. But nonetheless, the thing that's interesting about great work is that the sort of golden thread that ties together what I wanted to do as a child and what I'm doing as an adult is definitely there. And so maybe someday I'll work on Sesame Street or somehow be involved in the Jim Henson Company. I'm not saying it's an impossibility, but it still feels very much the beginning of my great work, even though it didn't look the way I thought that it would.
Allow me to bring you to one evening that you're watching the program, okay? And that moment where you saw when you came to the realization about, you know, Bert and Ernie are right there in here, that, you know, maybe we can have, you know, we can work with, we can be friends with people that have different opinions than us, different way of thinking than us, right? Different way of living than us. What made you think that in that little Amanda brain at a very young age? There's a big concept for Amanda to realize about the world. So tell us.
Well, you know, what's interesting about it is it has some of its roots are in Vietnam, actually. So I tell this story in my book also, so it's something I'm used to talking about. But so as a young person, I had two parents, and one was my father, who was deployed to Vietnam. And while he was in Vietnam, one of the things that happens to a lot of American soldiers who were deployed to the Vietnam War was that they got sort of hooked on drugs while they were there, as it was just part of the culture of the American soldier world, I guess. And my father also got hooked on heroin, actually. And it was challenging to know that about him as a small person and to wonder what it meant, because a lot of people think they know who you are when they know something that big about you, right? So, oh, you're a drug addict, or you are in recovery, or whatever it is, right? Like they think, oh, now I know who you are. But as a child, I didn't feel like that gave me any information about him, because to me, he was funny and nice and really one of the kindest people I've ever met in my whole life. And I think I was, even as a young person, trying to understand why we're so quick to think we know each other based on like information that, like, why do we think knowing that about somebody means we know them? And so there's so much more to people. And certainly there was so much more to my father. And he was also very silly. So he also loved the Muppets. And the whole Muppet gang, so there's Muppets on Sesame Street, but there's also Muppets on like The Muppet Show, which was more of a nighttime show. Sesame Street was on during the day, but The Muppet Show was on at night. And I would watch it with my dad. And it was like Bert and Ernie are just the beginning. There's like an eagle who's very judgmental, and there's these two guys that sit up in the balcony and heckle the Muppets. And there's Kermit the Frog as the main Muppet, and he's very like earnest. But then his girlfriend is Miss Piggy, and she's a diva. And so the entire Muppet crew is just full of, but at the heart of all of them, this is what I love about the Muppets. You asked the wrong question if you didn't want to hear all this. I love the Muppets so much. So the thing I love about them is that no matter what was going on with them, even if you were like kind of a jerk Muppet, at the heart of all Muppets is kindness. They are good friends to each other, and they are all very different, and things are always blowing up. Like somebody's always blowing up the kitchen, and Kermit's like, they blew up the kitchen. But at the end of the day, like the entire Muppet ethos was about that question. And so I felt very supported as a young person, like trying to make sense of the world, and someone so close to me being so misunderstood is how I felt at the time. And really trying to understand this complicated world that I found myself in through this very child-friendly vision. So I think I was thinking about those ideas anyways in the Muppets. I think Jim Henson was thinking about it too, the creator of the Muppets. And so it was almost like meeting through the screen, like meeting a bit of a soulmate, you know, like somebody who was also obsessed with the same ideas. And that's great. It was really great.
Wow. So it means that Jim Henson did great work.
Oh, yes, he sure did. Yeah. In fact, the second episode of my podcast, Unleashing Your Great Work, he's the focus of unpacking what great work is. I use Jim Henson as the person to unpack what great work looks like.
Wow. Okay, we're gonna get into the great work in a little bit later in this episode, right? But I wanna continue traveling time with you. You know, from that little girl watching the show until what she's been doing now is a huge, journey in between.
It is.
All right. Yeah. So what did you do, along the way before you get into the work that you do here? Share with us the pivotal please. Yeah.
Well, so the Muppets on Sesame Street were one part of my love of Sesame Street. The other part of the reason Sesame Street was such an enduring influence on me was the education part. So I went to my undergraduate degree desiring to create accessible learning experiences for kids who were vulnerable, who weren't getting because I was that kind of kid, actually. Like, I didn't have a lot of privilege at all, or any. I mean, I guess I had some, everybody has some, but, I was poor, and it was Sesame Street that really kind of made me think like, oh, there's other kids like me who deserve the same access to this information. And then I was very, very lucky and blessed to get a free ride scholarship to my undergraduate degree, and I studied their communication with the idea that I would go work in children's television. But it was the education part that kept capturing my attention, particularly the learning piece. And so my master's degree was in applied developmental and educational psychology. So how does the psychology of the human being play out in the context of schools? And then my PhD was at Columbia University in New York. That's how we ended up in New York. And the focus there was trying to understand the purpose of education. And then once you understand the purpose of education, then you can do a better job of making sure that education meets the goals it's set out. Because it doesn't always meet the goals of a sort of high, a sort of high vibe version of education. So in my PhD, I worked focusing on, that's where I really became a cognitive psychologist, where I'm trying to understand, or at the time, and still, trying to understand how human beings change their minds. And learning is a process of changing your mind. You go from being a person who doesn't know something like multiplying fractions to being a person who does know that thing. So your mind actually changes. We know that it physiologically changes through neuroplasticity, but also just our beliefs change, our prior knowledge changes, like your brain physically just changes when you learn things. And I wanted to understand how exactly that happens so that we could develop and design schools that do a better job of leveraging the human brain in the context of schooling. And what's interesting about that is a lot of what we know about schools and how to really motivate students, support them, make them feel like they belong, teach them complex ideas. A lot of that we know about schools actually is what we know about people. So adults also struggle with the same things kids in schools struggle with. And that's where the TEDx talk came from, was I was using educational psychology, applying it to adult life. So the 3 mindsets that stop you from doing what you say you want to do or doing your great work, is how I talk about it now, are 3 academic mindsets applied to the adult world. So we think we can't, we think people like us don't do that, and we don't want to. Those are the 3. Those are the same 3 things that stop students from learning in schools, and it's the same thing that stops adults from exercising or starting their business or following up on a lead or whatever it is that is your great work. Like wherever you're stuck or blocked in doing those things, what we understand about kids in schools, teachers in schools, is very helpful. So my current great work sort of was born out of that realization. I started doing workshops. I did the TEDx talk. I started coaching people. And I wrote the book. Like, it all emerged out of that realization that I actually know a lot about what it takes for a person who, because lots of kids feel misunderstood and like not that motivated about school. So if you can intervene and make them feel like they belong and that they are understood and that they can do it, you see amazing transformations in students. And I've seen it also with adults using a lot of the same information.
Wow, Amanda, that's something big in here, and I wanna dive it back with you in time again. Okay, so there's 2 pieces from the shows that you mentioned earlier. One is about like the vulnerable, the show for a vulnerable kid, right? And then the another one is for the education part.
Yeah.
All right. And since when you realized, at what age did you realize, the importance of the educational part of that show?
Well, so when you are a kid, education is life. You go to school. That's where your friends are. That's where the other adults are. Everything you're doing, you don't even think of life outside of school when you're a kid, unless you have to for some reason, right? Like your life is complicated in ways that does make you think about it. But for the most part, kids go to school and then that's what they do. So when I was trying to understand life as a kid, I was really trying to understand school. But then when I went to college and I looked backwards, what I realized, because like I said, I was really lucky to have great teachers in my childhood who encouraged me. And then I was really lucky to get money to go to college because I couldn't pay for it myself. And ever since then, I've just been really lucky to have opportunities to continue my education, to get a master's, to get a PhD, all of that. And so there was a moment when I realized there was life outside of school, but by then I think I was still really focused on life inside of school, because my passion when it comes to education is very similar to my passion when it comes to great work, but it's that I know that we're missing the people who can save us. The Einsteins that have the brilliant ideas, who could change the face of science, but aren't given opportunities and are misunderstood and are structurally just, pushed aside by the education system. It's not, their life is impacted by that, but the whole world is. We need the people who have insights and creativity and new ideas and are living, like we always say in change management, that you can't solve problems with the same minds that created the problem.
Yeah.
And we have to get more people at the higher levels solving our problems of our world. Like, we are not going to solve these problems otherwise. So education is the number one lever to actually lift people out of poverty, to give them the resources so that their brilliance can shine through and really start to change the world for the better. And I really believe we need more diversity of opinions at the level where decisions are being made. So education is my part of paving the way for more people with more experiences that are more in touch with the way it is for most people. So education is always like, it just feels to me like the place where I understand what's happening and I can help make things better. Once they become adults, I can help them through the great work stuff, but education is it's just such an amazing opportunity, because they're little, they're young, they can still have new ideas, they can see the world in a different way, they just do see the world in a different way, and we need more of that in our world, in my opinion.
Amanda, the reason I asked for it is because you look at from a little girl, right, to the journey of grow up and adulthood, right? There's so many things that happen along the way that can take that curiosity and that, like interest away from Amanda. Maybe, at an early age, you see the importance of education. So you're going to change the world through education, improving education. And then maybe a couple of years later, you say, I'm going to become a singer and change the way that I use my voice and my songs to change the world. Or maybe, different things that happen along the way. I want to see where that relentless and where does it come from in Amanda's life? Was it because of the way of you nurture, or is that in nature, in your DNA, somebody from the family have that things inside of them that become a role model for you, become something that you looked up and you want to become that person? You can dig inside and then try to give us that answer. Where that coming from?
I think because this is where the concept of great work keeps returning. I feel like actually the world did its best to try to beat it out of me, beat the curiosity out of me. I had a complicated childhood. I loved my family, but my dad did have a lot of problems, and we were very poor. I mean, we weren't very poor, but we were, we were on welfare and those kinds of social projects in the US that make it so that you can like buy food even though you don't have money for food, but I was also very lucky. Like, I guess I would say that there was a candle burning from the beginning. There was this great work way of being. Like, I can remember times, like, I remember one friend of mine in 7th grade said to me, like, we had just been chatting about 7th grade. We were about to go into 7th grade. And she was saying that she didn't want to go and she didn't like school. And I was saying, oh no, it's going to be great. Like, these are the things we get to do and it's going to lead these places. And I remember her saying, wow, I actually feel excited about 7th grade now. And I remember feeling very satisfied that I was able to help her feel like, you know, we have this, what does Mary Oliver call it? Like this one wild and precious life. And I want everyone to realize the opportunity in front of them to just do whatever it is that makes them feel like their life is wild and precious. Mm-hmm. And when I see the light go out, then I wonder, like, how can we turn it back on? Education is how I had my light turned back on over and over again. I had teachers who really believed in me. I was able to, like, go places and meet people and learn things and ask good questions and be seen and understood in education. That was my place where I could have my light turned back on. I was lucky that I had this sort of underpinnings of good at school, you know, like I take tests really easily. Like, it was a place where I felt, I don't know, validated, which isn't always the case for people at school, but it was for me. And so I think then I think I have a little bit of a rebellious streak. That probably is from my family. My dad was definitely somebody who was like, I don't feel like it. And so we didn't do it. And I was like, interesting. So I think I wasn't like, I'm a high achiever. So a lot of people like me are very type A and like kind of rule followers. And I was like successful, but I often didn't follow the rules. I was like, and that gave me, you know, and I was still very successful. So I kind of got this glimpse of another way that you could be successful. And I thought, oh, people need to know this. People need to know that you don't have to be like under the thumb of expectations. And so I always, because I have this education bent, I'm always turning back around and saying, come on, like, I'll help you, like, come and we'll do this together. And then I was lucky, I think, to find the right people who really benefited from that. And I realized, wow, this really works. And I can help people stop feeling so like having their light turned off. Like, I really think that if we can turn the lights back on inside of people, we won't feel so much like being aggressive towards each other. And I'm very worried about that for my children and for the children in the schools that I, you know, help improve. So I think it's always been there and I won't let it go. Like, at this point, I'm like, I've built an entire like protective structure around that flame. Like, I'm not letting it, no one can turn it off. Like, I've decided for myself that flame is very important to me. It's my great work. And whatever I'm doing, whether it's writing a book or I wrote a screenplay or teaching my students at Hunter College or having a podcast conversation like this one, like, I know that I feel strongly that I was put here on this planet for the purpose of helping people realize, like, all is not lost in your life. In the world, yes, but also in your life. If you feel better in your life, then we're all going to get better out here. So I don't know if it's the answer, but I feel like it's an answer. And the more I talk to people on podcasts and write books and what have you, I'm more and more convinced. So
you responding to that same flame. You've been responding to your calling. That calling, yes. That great work that been waiting for you, that creative genius has been waiting for you, Amanda. And the way I see it is like in the way you pursue your education, you're circling around that, you know, through communication, whether or not that would be the way to answering the question you've been waiting for to get into the great work, right? Then from that circulation around, then you're starting to navigate into the center until you figure out, oh, this is the work that you want to do, and this is the work that you want the people to do for themselves. Help us, bring us to that moment of realization, Amanda. How did you sparkle that idea to say, okay, this is you name it great work, and you start to circulate around that. Yes.
That's a good question. So I started, and I think I was thinking maybe kind of too granularly. I started really helping people with time management. Because I had gone and done some consulting and gotten kind of burned out and really struggled with that. And I learned how to manage my own time through psychology and education research and all that. So I started out thinking I would write a book about time management. And in fact, I did write a book about time management. It was called The Aligned Time Method. But as I was developing the book, I was talking to an editor, and she's like, but why, Amanda? But why would we care about aligning our time? And I was like, because if you are mindful about how you spend your time, then you can free up time for what actually matters to you. You can, and she's like, but why? You know, it sounds like most typical time management talking heads, it's like how to do more. But I was going on and on about how to do less. Do less of what doesn't matter so that you free up this space to do your great work. And into that space, as I was talking to this editor who was helping me, I got really like animated, and I was telling her, like, we have to do the work that lights us up. It's why we're here. Like, the world is changing at a rapid pace. We only have one life. Like, it was all this stuff, right? And she was like, well, that's what the book should be about. And I was like, this is bad timing, because I'm supposed to send this book to the, to the page formatter in a month. And she's like, but you can't write the book without the beating heart of it. And so we realized that, and so I rewrote the book. It became the first edition of Great Work, and it has the Great Work method in it, what used to be called the Aligned Time Method. But it also has this Great Work piece, which is what I think really was the beating heart of it. The rest of it is tactics. Like, we know, the thing that's crazy about psychology is we understand humans at this point. We know how to help humans do anything that they want to do. A human says, I want to do that, we can help them do it. But like, still, people are stuck. They're burnout. They're imposters. They feel unfulfilled. They feel miserable. They feel lonely. They feel depressed. But I really think not all of it, because of course there's biological things to depression, anxiety, and stuff. But when we are lit up from the inside, when we know what it is we're hoping to accomplish with our lives, because we're uniquely positioned and passionate about it, then we're willing to do all these tactics. Like, we're willing to say no to stuff. We're willing to time block. We're willing to persevere when things get hard. But we're not willing to do that if we don't actually care about what we're doing. So very often time management problems are actually mindset problems, which is the mindset of, I don't actually care about this. I'm not doing the work that lights me up. So why would I work this hard? It's like a very rational, yeah, why would you? So don't do that work. Do the work that matters to you. And then you start to have the willingness to learn what it takes for you to, do whatever it is you really want to do. Like, the skills are suddenly very important in a way that they maybe felt less important before.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. And I want to bring this one into a different perspective a little bit, in terms of, I want the leaders to listening to the way that they can pass great works from their works, so that other people will be able to have the great works themselves also. And the reason I ask for that is because when you say about Bird and Ernie, is a part of that is all of the characters there is one part is the kindness, right? So I think that leaders, as individual, we want to be kind to other people. And along the way, for some reason, the system that corporate is setting up right at the moment it pushes people to work more with less resources. There's a lot of stress that put onto the people at the moment. And for me to do the great work, to be having the privilege of having the great work, it seems to be very challenging. So what happened to our leaders what can we do to help them change and bring back that kindness and create an environment of great works for other people to enjoy it also themselves?
It's a very timely question because of the incredible efficiency that is made possible through artificial intelligence, right? Like, we know this, we're having this moment where artificial intelligence can do all this work, and it feels very challenging and scary for people, that we're going to end up just writing human beings out of the experience of life on Earth, basically. Like, we don't need humans anymore. People are saying things like that. And I think that it's the culmination of a scarcity understanding of the world that is so pervasive, and it does start in schools. But it's this belief about the world that we know its bounds, like we understand what the world is, and it's just this. And as I win, you lose. As this ends, I'm in trouble. It's a very, I think it's a misunderstanding about the nature of life. That actually, and it does get back to leaders, but I think it's like, we're all so afraid, like psychologically, we're 10 times more afraid of losing what we have than not getting what we want, right? Like, we are so protective of what we already have. It's just a biological thing. But the reality is that when we're losing what we have every day, we lost yesterday, because now it's today. We lost our childhood to become an adult. Like, there's loss as part of life, but we've set ourselves against it as a people, like especially as corporate entities, we set ourselves against loss, which is kind of like setting yourself against death. It's like, you can if you want, but you will always lose that. Like, you're going to die. We're going to lose what we had to get what we want. Like, that's just how it is. And so I think that what has happened to leaders is that they're surrounded by a scarcity understanding of the world. They have to protect what they have, and they don't have the skills to realize, they might consciously, cognitively know, I can't get what I want actually without these other people. But other people are messy. They're full of problems. They think differently than you. They stop you from fastly pursuing what you want. But we don't feel like we have the skills to actually work with those people to get what we want. And so instead, we do what the human does, right? We collapse down into a scarcity mindset, and we protect what we already have. And that is not a kind place to be. A dog backed into a corner, afraid of being hit, is not a kind dog. And a human backed into a corner, afraid of losing their job and their financial security and their kids' future, is not a kind person. And so I think that kindness comes from relaxing into the belief that whatever happens, I've got the skills to handle it. And if I don't have the skills now, I can develop those skills. And that's actually the reason why the new edition of Great Work, which comes out on June 10th, actually has a new chapter on collaboration. And the reason I added that chapter was for this reason. People they feel like they just don't have it in them to work with others. But the solution to the problem, the abundance, right? The opposite of scarcity, abundance, that comes from working with other people. But it's not something we're comfortable with, because it requires that we relax a little bit and let things unfold. Out of that comes great abundance. Out of that comes great innovation, creativity, all the things that can solve wicked problems and make us feel better as human beings in our bodies. But it requires trust. And that is a skill too. So there's all these skills of collaboration that I think leaders know they need to learn, but it feels dangerous to go in that direction, because it is a departure from the protective stance that everybody's in right now as they watch the world ricochet out of control around them, whether that's because of AI or divisiveness or nationalism or war or whatever it is. Like, it's these are challenging times, but the answer is not in scarcity, it's in abundance, I think.
Okay. So if that's the case, so how can we help the leader to do what matters most in here, which is the abundant, right? And without sacrificing everything else, and so that they can really do the great work and also impacting onto the change of people to have the great works also. Yeah.
Well, I think the leader has to know what their great work is. We think that we have to just acquire great work from other people, but it's like, we don't have to do Elon Musk's great work. We don't have to do Jeff Bezos' great work. Sometimes it feels that way when you go to work at a company. You have to sign on to their vision statement, and like that has to become your goal in life. But you're there for a reason. Like, you have something that lights you up from the inside. How can you find a place for that in whatever environment you're in? And if it doesn't fit that environment, how can you find another environment where it does fit? And then once you're in an environment where you feel like I can be who I really am, then you have to respect the fact that if you have a light inside of you, then every member of your team has a light inside of them. How can you then, there's a certain set of skills that are helping other people recognize what their great work is and starting to piece the puzzle together so that everybody is bringing their interests, their passion, their hopes for the future, and their curiosities, all the things that we know make intrinsic motivation. How can we bring those onto the team? Then the leaders have to develop the skills to nurture everybody's great work, including their own, and then have these sort of collaboration skills that we talk about in chapter 7 of the book, which are like, you have to both know who you are and clearly communicate that while also staying open to other people's ideas. They're all these sort of two-sided skill sets. You have to be able to navigate conflict and repair after conflict. Like, there are these skills that go into actual authentic connection if that's the kind of team that you're trying to build. And everybody agrees that those are the kinds of teams that we want to build. Teams where people feel safe, where innovation can happen, where the leader is respected, and where like good ideas don't get squashed because you're afraid of getting in trouble. Like, we know that that's the kind of team we want to build. I think great work does play a part. Understanding great work in yourself and others does play a part in developing teams like that.
Beautiful. And you mentioned it start with, knowing who we are, right? And I saw a lot of good people come into environment one day they forgot completely about who they are, and they turn out to be a very different person when they first came, right? What should we do to help ourselves to be immune with, that, and then stay truly to who we are?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think that the number one thing is that you have to trust that you have great work inside of you. And a lot of people are like, I don't think I do have great work inside of me, Amanda. But listen, I have talked to hundreds of people, and I've never met a single one who does not have great work inside of them. Not one. And so you can trust me that you who's listening, you have great work inside of you. And if you believe that, if you really hold it inside of you, then the job is to excavate it. So one of the chapters in the book is about self-expertise, which is about like understanding yourself as a particular person. Like, I happen to be a person who does my best great work first thing in the morning. I have clients who they do their best. We call them hours of greatness. They do their hours of greatness from like 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. And I'm like, how can that be? I cannot understand that. But that's their self-expertise. So whatever is particular about you, however you want to spend your time, however you like to collaborate with others, however you like to manage your tasks, all of that information, when it comes from a place of nurturing and cultivating great work, eventually you'll become so clear about who you are. Like I said, like, I've built an entire structure protecting my great work, my little light inside of me. I've done that by discovering who I am and then not believing other people who try to tell me that they know who I am, because they might give me insights. That's not happening. But I know who I am. And I think people who lose track of who they are, it's because they don't necessarily trust that there is a real honest to goodness core of great work at the center that they can hold on to, that they can trust, that they can believe in. So that's the first piece, I think.
Wow. And if you, I know this question is not fair for you. And in this second edition of the book, if you pick one chapter that you really, really want to share with our audience, what is that chapter you want to share with our audience?
Well, so there's a journal, which is a time management journal. It's called the Great Work Journal. Inside of the Great Work Journal is the chapter that explains the method, like just the great work method, tactics, boots on the ground. That's the one, if somebody has great work inside of them and they feel like they just can't get to it, I would say get the journal. It's already got the chapter in it. Give it a shot. If somebody feels like, I don't know that I believe I have great work inside of me, then the chapter that I would recommend is the one called What is Your Great Work, is what it's called. Chapter 2, What is Your Great Work? Because that one helps to explain how they absolutely do have great work inside of them. So it just kind of depends on what the person's struggling with. And then my second favorite chapter, no matter what, no matter where you start, you have to read the Do Less chapter, because everyone's like, I can't add great work to my life. It's like, no, you cannot. You have to stop doing all this craziness and make space for your great work. So that's the second chapter I would recommend.
Wonderful. And I believe that we all want to do our great works, right? So how can they get a hold of you so that they can live for you? Yes.
Thank you so much for asking that question. So I have a website. It's amandacrowell.com. We can maybe put it in the show notes, I guess. And on there, there's blogs, there's events, free events. They are usually at noon Eastern Standard, so like New York City time. But they're international, they're online, they're on Zoom. Anyone could come from anywhere in the world. We had someone from Dubai on the last one that we had yesterday. That was really cool. We'd love to have friends from Vietnam. So those are great ways to like come hear more about it, or the live events. There's a podcast, Unleashing Your Great Work. Those are conversations with people about their great work. Those are really good. We'd love to have you on the podcast if you're interested. You could come and talk about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that would be great. So yeah, just come join the Great Work universe. Buy the book. It's coming out. It should be right now. It's only pre-selling in the US, but on June 10th, it's available on all the Amazons everywhere. So we should be able to get it anywhere in the world on June 10th. And the journal also is on Amazon, so it's easily shipped anywhere. So I'd say just come, hang out, tell me who you are, like tell me how you found me on this podcast, and like let's just start the conversation, because it's not really something that transforms overnight. It's something that is it's a lifelong pursuit of your own light, of your own great work.
Beautiful. Amanda, two last questions for this conversation, okay?
Okay.
And you mentioned one word is repeatedly in this conversation is the word I think. And my wife and I, we have the belief that our thinking has a lot of issue at the moment because of so many things out there that distracting our ability to think, and that ability to think is diminishing over time. So every conversation like this is an opportunity for us to get something for our audience, to listen, to reflect, and to improve their ability to think. And we believe that is where the transformation starts, right? For them to have that great work also themselves. So Amanda, how have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
Whew, that's quite the question for a cognitive psychologist. So I think the key to developing your capacity for critical thinking and creativity and innovation and all the things that we want thoughts to result in is to trust that your thoughts are important, that you actually developing the capacity to find out what you think, that thought you're giving the time to could change the world, and really believing that it's worth it. So then when you have to put your phone down because you've decided you don't want to just fall asleep playing Candy Crush or whatever it is people are playing now. You're doing it because you believe that the thoughts you're cultivating, the space, the garden in your mind that you're nourishing can actually bear fruit that will make you so happy. It will make your family proud, and it will make your world better. And if you believe that about your thoughts, then it's worth the trouble to do all the things the other people on your podcast have probably said, like put your phone down and, you know, whatever else it is, read books, you know, all that stuff. But to do that, you have to believe that you've got something really important that could come out of that brain of yours. So give it space.
And that links directly to your great work also, the work that you do also, right? Wow,
Yeah.
That's a very powerful one. Last question, and we're gonna travel time together one more time, okay?
Okay.
So assuming that you, me, travel with that little Amanda, and I think the show you watch was in the mornings, right?
Yeah.
And the three of us gonna sit into that room, and the host, the program owner, Jim Henson, is the name I wrote correctly, Jim Henson?
Yeah.
Okay, that guy is also there. Okay?
Oh my God. This is so thrilling.
Yeah. So if you tell that little Amanda something to talk to Jim about the program, about something that, you know, anything that you can talk to Jim about that show, what would you tell him?
Yeah. Oh. Honestly, I think I would just want Jim Henson to know that his great work has changed my life. And like, even as a little person, I would just want me to hug him. Because, he made me feel understood in a way I haven't felt since, really. I can't think of another artist who made me feel the way Jim Henson has made me feel in my life. And I could feel it even then as a little person. And to some of the kids who were on Sesame Street got to hug Jim Henson. Well, they would hug Kermit the Frog, who was Jim Henson. Like Jim Henson was here and Kermit was here because it's a puppet, you know. And I was always so jealous of those kids. So I would say just hug Jim Henson so that he knows that his great work changed my whole life.
Wow.
Mm.
See, when you do something great, when we do something great, right, your great work will definitely impact not only you, but to many other people out besides you, right? And I hope that many of our audience will be able to reach out to you, to read your works, to learn from it, and then being able to do their great works because they will never know how their works impact and create, you know, change for other people. So Amanda, thank you so much for doing your great work, and thank you so much for helping others to do their great works. It's such an honor for me to have you on the show and having you share your stories. I love you, and I look forward to seeing you in person one day soon, okay?
Yes, sounds great. Thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you very much. You have a wonderful day, please.
You too.
Bye-bye, my friend.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.